In coordination with the Pittsburgh office of the FBI and the Erie, Pennsylvania Police Department, the Cleveland's FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force, including Cleveland Police Department personnel assigned to the Joint Terrorism Task Force, executed an arrest of Devin Bryce Poland and Brandon Michael Altoff Long at approximately 6 a.m. this morning. These two individuals had their initial appearance virtually at 9 a.m. this morning before U.S. Magistrate Judge Richard Lenzillo. Last Saturday, just 6 days before today's arrests, these two individuals discussed, planned, and traveled to our city with the explicit intent to destroy and incite violence. These two were detained by Cleveland Police Department in downtown Cleveland during restricted curfew hours. Their vehicle was searched. Items found in the vehicle included a firearm, numerous rounds of ammunition, fire gel, and a hammer, among other items. A joint investigation between Cleveland Police Department and the Cleveland Division of the FBI was initiated. During the course of this swift investigation, a federal search warrant was obtained for 2 Apple iPhones, and Facebook messages between Poland and Long were reviewed. None of the messages exchanged between Mr. Poland and Mr. Long mentioned how their travel to Cleveland was to memorialize and honor the memory of George Floyd. Quite the opposite. The sole aim was to fan the literal flames of rioters because, and I quote from their messages, "It's a once-in-a-lifetime thing." The arrest of Mr. Poland and Mr. Long this morning marks just the beginning of our combined law enforcement effort to identify, locate, and apprehend those who took advantage of and exploited a peaceful protest for their own personal but very short-term gain. The FBI, along with all of our federal, state, and local partners, will not cease in our efforts to bring those responsible for last Saturday's carnage to justice. We will review every photo, every video, and review every violent posting uploaded to social media to piece together what happened and who had a hand in making it happen. You may think that you are anonymous. You may think that you escaped the city last Saturday night. But Mr. Poland and Mr. Long thought the same thing.
As you just heard, we have announced the arrests of Mr. Poland and Mr. Altoff. Those include arrests for a variety of federal offenses, including transporting a firearm or incendiary device in furtherance of civil disorder, and conspiracy to use fire or an explosion in furtherance of a federal felony. I did want to point out that, Mr. Altoff and Mr. Poland, in short, they were not from here. They arrived with weapons and ingredients for an incendiary device. They purposely inserted themselves into a constitutionally protected protest with a design to exploit it for their own purposes. And then they were later found in the midst of unprecedented rioting and looting in the streets of our city. So let me get out in front of any questions as to whether there were out-of-state agitators who hijacked last weekend's peaceful protests for their own devices. The answer is undoubtedly yes, and that is demonstrated with respect to today's arrests. Now, Mr. Altoff and Poland represent the first 2 federal arrests in this district stemming from last weekend's riots, and these were, by any definition, riots that disrupted the end of a lawful and peaceful assembly of well-meaning citizens. We are working on numerous additional investigations, as Special Agent in Charge Smith just said. These are all associated with those riots, not with the peaceful protests. And we are pursuing a number of potential federal charges involving a series of individuals who are responsible for the destruction of our downtown. The men and women of the U.S. Attorney's Office, Federal Bureau of Investigation, ATF, we are all part of the Department of Justice. And this is what we do through our work in this district of 6 million residents and across the country. We hold people accountable for their actions. We are doing just that with our investigations related to the widespread looting of Cleveland's downtown. We are also doing that in other areas of our district that have experienced similar damage and looting. So last weekend, if you were in Cleveland or Toledo or Akron or Youngstown or anywhere else in this district, last weekend, if you burnt a car, if you broke into a store, if you beat somebody up, then we are going to find you and we are going to hold you accountable with federal charges as appropriate. And if not, we're going to assist our county prosecutor partners with state charges. And our obligation to demand accountability does not stop with those who rioted and looted. We are still engaged in a consent decree with the Cleveland Division of Police. Accountability is a huge part of that process, and we intend to engage productively, as we always do with the city, on the events of last weekend. You will get no disagreement from anyone here on stage. I'm confident of that. That if there was behavior amongst police officers that departed from our own very high standards, or if there was a violation of any law, then you better believe they will be held accountable for that as well. The voices of the protesters and demonstrators from last Saturday and in several marches throughout this week, it echoes in our ears, but it also echoes in our hearts. I hear you, we all hear you, and I believe that we are all seeking the same thing: accountability, justice, and future days and nights that are free from fear, anxiety, and victimization. The people up here are all committed to ensuring that you continue to have the ability to do exactly what the founders intended: to peaceably assemble, to seek redress of grievances, to petition the government. We all swore to uphold the Constitution, which means that we swore to uphold your right to do so. And we will ensure that when you speak, you will be heard,